Hello and welcome to Discuss on Discord, a series where I get to talk to interesting people working in the games industry thanks to Lenovo Legion. And today I am talking with Ben Williams, who has worked across everything from EB Games to PAX Australia and is the Gaming Business Development Manager at Lenovo. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much, Hex. It's amazing to be here and to chat with you.
Yeah, I feel like some people in the games industry have kind of carved out a path for themselves in one specific area, but you've been gathering experience across just about every corner of the industry. Can we start with how you found yourself working in games?
Yeah, look, it's been a wild ride. I've been a gamer ever since my auntie first let me use her Atari 2600 when I was very, very small. So I've always been a massive gaming fan throughout my entire formative years. But at school, my school, there really wasn't that sort of opportunity to look at gaming as a career in any meaningful way. We didn't have much in the way of computer courses at my school, and it really only seemed to be journalism was the only way forward. And I was not a writer. That was not my calling. So I stumbled into my first job out of school as a Christmas casual at EB Games.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Amazing.
It was very exciting. Seven days before Christmas, the Warringah Mall EB Games decided to bring me in as a whole bunch of Christmas hires, and the rest is history. It was a pretty much a trial by fire, dropping in that close to Christmas. But I knew games and I could talk underwater, and it worked out.
Were you involved in in the setting up of any of those infamous sales where you have to like wallpaper every inch of the store in sale signs?
Yeah, so the first time we ever did that, my manager came back from one of the managers' conferences and called us all in one night after work and said, right, I've got to explain this new concept that we're going to do. We've done sales, we've put stickers on things before, and that's all pretty good, but this is not that. We need to make this store not look like this store now, and you can't see anything. If you can see the back of the store, you've done it wrong. So if you need to be able to know that this is on sale from the other end of the shopping center, and again, if the field manager walks in and they don't have complaints, we did actually get that as a requirement. If I don't hear from security guards or from center management, you guys haven't pushed the envelope enough.
Wow.
It's bananas, man. Absolutely bananas.
It worked. It's become such an iconic element of EB Games, and I think even at one point they were selling merch with all of the sale gear on it, and people were like, yes, I'm here for it. And I mean, EB Games is such an institution here in Australia, but things have obviously changed a lot for brick and mortar retail stores. I mean, how did you see the industry change during your time there?
When I was working in the EB Games office, when I started there, Facebook didn't exist, Twitter didn't exist. We didn't have an e-commerce site. We had a website that was kind of informational, but that was about it. And we launched all of those things while I was there. So we actually developed the EB Games website, which is now one of the biggest sort of single retail sites in the country. We launched I think I literally made the passwords and and set up the email address and put the first profile pic on the Facebook page and the Twitter page. And that's now, again, like they've got one of the biggest social media communities in the country for a retail store. They're huge on social media, and those things that they've really agilely sort of jumped on and leveraged well to stay in touch with the games community has sort of helped them continue on really well into a digital future for, as you said, which is essentially a bricks and mortar retail store. So it's quite exciting.
I guess it just goes to show that when you have forged a kind of trust and history with customers, they'll kind of want to support you as long as you're keeping up with, how people are, purchasing things. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's really great.
And Australia and New Zealand have done that particularly well for EB Games. A massive kudos to them. There's a reason that they are one of the only countries in the world, like Australia and New Zealand, the only country in the world that are still EB Games. Almost everything else is either rebranded or come on board as GameStop when GameStop bought EB in 2007. But because of the rapport that and the brand that EB had with the Australian gaming community, they were allowed to keep EB Games and continue on with that brand because it was such a key part of the gaming Australian landscape.
I think that's so indicative of Australian culture in general, is that we don't like things to be too Americanized.
Yes.
Obviously there's a lot of cultural influence from the UK and the States, but I think when Australians kind of latch onto something, they get really protective and defensive on it. So it doesn't surprise me that we haven't rebranded in that area. Yeah, that's awesome. So I imagine it was quite tough then to leave the EB family after 11 years. What was next for you after that?
Yeah, 11 years was a long time. It's a lot of people that you spend a lot of time with at a lot of different events and the like. So, but it was time to come back to Sydney. I'm from Sydney, and I'd moved up to Brisbane to work for EB, and I was quite ready to come back and be with my family. And I'd met my now wife, and she was also from Sydney. So we both packed up and came back. And I actually managed to find a spot with, it doesn't exist anymore, but a distributor called Tough Cat Entertainment. They were around for a brief period at the start of the 2010s. And that was run by Julian White, who used to own Red Ant Entertainment back in the day, which is a significantly more famous games distributor. And it was quite intense because within 12 months, I was going from one side of the EB Expo and EB Managers Conference as staff and attendee to the other side as an exhibitor, and actually setting up a Tough Cat booth at the EB Expo in Homebush in 2011, I think it was, or 2012. And having all the managers who I'd recently just been working with sort of coming and seeing my stuff, and having to do my 8-minute sales pitch 200 times over the course of 3 days before the public came in. It was crazy.
Yeah, wow. Those events were great. They were so awesome. I loved the EB Games shows.
Yeah, that was super fun. Very, very super fun.
And so, speaking of kind of large-scale events and conventions, you then found yourself working for ReadPop, was it?
Oh, yes, indeed.
With PAX?
Working for PAX.
I feel like the gaming community here in Australia is, it's obviously a thriving and a passionate one, but were you surprised when a convention as big as PAX came to Australia?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, I definitely was. The PAX itself, like Penny Arcade and PAX, I've been reading Penny Arcade for years by that point. And so I had been rather jealously consuming all of the PAX content from Seattle every year when it was on, when I couldn't go because it was in America. That's ironically how I met my wife at one of the EB Managers conferences, because she had just come back from PAX, and so I sat her down and I said, "Tell me everything." And
no way!
We talked for 12 hours, and the very next year in 2009 was our first trip together, and we went to Seattle and went to PAX when it was still just called PAX, not PAX West or PAX East or anything. Seeing that event was life-changing. Like it's an event that is like from an Australian point of view, had been like no other, just in regards to sort of how it was for the community, not necessarily for the brands who were exhibiting there, which most shows are. Like a lot of trade shows and events and things like that, they're very much set up for the brands who are there to engage the audience. And look, sure, PAX is that to an extent, but it was not designed that way. It's designed as a community event. So when EB Expo was being developed while I was still at EB, I was sort of gushing all the information that I'd taken from PAX and in the States, and said, here's all the amazing things we should be doing. So I knew that there was a desire for that massively here in Australia, and clearly the Penny Arcade guys did as well. Like they saw that around the world, Australia and New Zealand were the area that was getting them the most traffic and the most revenue outside of North America for their content. And combined with, I'm sure, a little bit of sympathy of the fact that we get everything late or not at all, or we didn't have an R18, so games would get banned at the time. And so I think they definitely felt that we probably deserved it more than anyone who was equivalent. So that, yeah, the fact that it then rocked up in Australia was just such an amazing thing to happen for this community.
It's interesting too, because I feel like once that event started happening and was so successful, it made a lot of people kind of sit up and take notice about notice of the gaming community and how, I guess, broad and passionate it is, because it's hard to quantify that stuff when you don't see it in a kind of physical form. But once everyone was flying in from other states and stuff just to be there and to celebrate something that takes place largely on a screen, it's hard to imagine that, people would get so much joy out of being in a physical space together. But it just goes to show that with any kind of community-based event, people just want to be around other people that are passionate about the thing that they are passionate about. And that's what PAX, I think, still does so successfully. And not being able to have it for the last couple of years has been really tough.
Has it what?
It's interesting seeing that a lot of these, E3 as well, there's sort of speculation as to whether or not it will, transform into an online event forever going forward. Do you think that these events can be as successful if they become sort of online live streaming things, or do you think they need to be a physical in-person thing?
I mean, E3 specifically is an interesting one, right? Because, as I sort of mentioned before, it's something that as Australians, it's a bit different for yourself as a games journalist, but as your average Australian, it was something that was always online, right? It was completely inaccessible. It was for press only. It was in another country. So whatever you got from E3, which were like, you'd get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to find out what the hell Sony was going to talk about. You'd do that. But it was all digital. I've only been to E3, I think, once or twice. And while it's pretty amazing place to be, it's still very much a trade event. So I don't know how massively it would sort of end up changing the way that what people are, the trade, the industry are using it for. I don't think that would change massively. And the consumers still get to consume all that content, right? Like the fans still get to see the press conferences. They still get to see all the trailer drops and the demos. For consumer events, like more focused like a PAX and say Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, those kind of things. Like, I think that's even more and more relevant every year because it's not just a business purpose like E3 is. It's a community purpose. It's a place for people to come together and enjoy themselves. Particularly for hardware companies like Lenovo, there is a lot of need for in-person events because you can't really download a trailer for the latest Legion laptop, right? Like you have to engage with it and interact with it and see it for yourself.
Yeah, we had a whole Legion set up for, I think, the PAX Rising area one year, and that was really cool to be able to kind of showcase indie devs' work on really great hardware at the same time. It was just such a cool thing to get behind, because I feel like PAX is one of PAX's biggest impacts on the gaming community in Australia is being able to provide that opportunity for indie devs to show their stuff to people in person. And
the last physical event we were just talking about it today, was the IGN Awards last year. So that was February last year. It was the very last physical event that Legion in Australia was a part of. And what we did there is we actually set up a whole bunch of Legion laptops and desktops at the nightclub at the Star Casino in Sydney. And majority of that stuff was indie product, and the star of the show was Moving Out by SMG Studios. People having a drink and playing that and just enjoying themselves around, like, before and after the IGN crew get up and say how many awards Call of Duty takes home that year. Like that's why I'm excited by more and more live events coming back for the gaming consumer.
Speaking of live events, after you moved on from ReadPop, you shifted into esports. Can you tell me a little bit about your time at Showdown and Gfinity, and I guess what your experience of the esports scene here in Australia was like?
Yeah, look, there's a lot sort of that happened in that component. So when I was at Showdown, that was looking after Twitch sales before Twitch was in Australia. So we were doing.
Was that before Twitch was here?
Yes. So
okay.
That was pre-Twitch. So that was when we were looking after all of the Twitch advertising, obviously, but also making influencer content. And actually, we had a studio. We were making our own broadcasts. I think we were putting one out 5 days a week or something at one point.
Wow.
With some people who are quite huge now as like our regular host, James Turner, YT. Like I think he's got 1 million subs like award now, and he would just rattle into our sort of back of office studio and talk about garbage to like 70 viewers like 3 times a week. But we were sort of just trying to show brands what they could do with gamers and influencers on Twitch outside of just here's an ad to put over whatever sort of the biggest streamer out of the States is doing at the time. Like bringing brands into that space for Australia to sort of, really engage with gaming personalities. And that was the natural sort of step on to esports, because Twitch is where esports is. And we created Throwdown Esports at the time. It was our own brand, and we did some Rocket League tournaments and some League of Legends tournaments and things like that. And it was quite interesting to sort of see the viewership that we got. The whole sort of sports mentality behind it was really interesting, and looking at how you could sort of mimic what traditional sport was doing to make to make an actual property that had value, and sort of craft those bits and pieces together into something that was going to help develop the players, develop the casters, and all the techs and the broadcasters and everything like that, and in a way that made commercial sense for advertisers to sort of be a part of it. So it sort of worked. Like it was starting to get there, and people were liking and getting on board. We had a couple of partners who sort of jumped on long term. But then, a couple of years after that, Gfinity out of the UK decided they wanted to sort of start to franchise out and create like TV level esports.
Yeah, because you had that like purpose built facility in the Hoyts entertainment quarter as well. What was that experience like?
That was next level. Like, honestly, it's so hard to describe if you didn't get there, and sadly, not many people got there, being that it was in the entertainment quarter in Sydney before the light rail was made.
Sure.
So it wasn't exactly the most accessible place in the world. But that was crazy. Like, they gutted one of the cinemas, removed the screen, removed like some of the seats, and completely purpose-built this stage, which please Google Gfinity Australia and see some photos, because it was nuts. It like screens and LEDs and these giant video walls, and it was a hardcore TV studio that had cinema seating. So it was an arena. Like, it was designed as a show. It had hosts, it had analysts, it had like packages of here's the origin story of this team, and here's like wacky things they're doing out in the car park so that we can make some other content. And then we've got like these casters who we've found at PAX, who are now like our TV casters for Street Fighter, like who've never done anything. Like, one of the guys hadn't done casting like more than his first gig was 8 months prior.
I feel like that's how all casters start, though, right? They kind of just get thrown in the deep end.
Yes. And they're making some of the most engaging content. Like I never missed a live show of the Street Fighter because it was just the craziest show, and the personalities were huge. It was like watching wrestling. Like they put on these personas and they'd like start trash talking each other. It was bananas. And so you're doing that in the studio with like 7 camera guys and an AD yelling at people, like assistant director yelling at people in between like takes and how long we've got to go back to the live. I'm on Twitch chat and the audience trying to see like how many viewers we've got and what the sentiment is. You run upstairs to where the projection suite is, and there's like you go through the little curtain that we've got walled off, and it looks like Fox Sports in there. Like there's 17 screens and there's graphic mixers and audio boards and everything. And it's just like you can't understand that it's real, like that this is esports that we're creating.
It's such a tricky thing as well, I think, because I feel like a lot of big companies and organizations are excited by the idea of esports, even if they don't really understand it. They see money in it, so they want to be a part of it. But it's not really as simple as that. I see Melbourne kind of positioning itself as kind of an esports gaming, capital, and they've got the Esports Open and there's Fortress down there and stuff like that. But what do you think some of the challenges are sort of in cultivating the esports scene here in Australia? Because I feel like it's, I don't know if it's like just population numbers or if it's just about finding the right games that will get people to kind of be physically at a location. It seems that we haven't quite nailed the like formula of it yet.
There's a lot of those things. Everything you said there is definitely a challenge. But look, there's definitely a lot of the same challenges you get with any sport, which is something that potentially a lot of people didn't think about as esports starts to grow. But I see a lot of crossover with what happens with the A-League for soccer, right? Because it's football, soccer football is the biggest sport in the world. Like it's played by the most countries in the world. And yet it is number 4, 5 most popular sport in Australia because the talent isn't here for the game. We don't have the best players for soccer in Australia. The best players are in Brazil or England or what have you. So more people watch, obviously, the English Premier League than watch the A-League. So, but it still costs a lot of money to make the A-League. So you need a lot of people to watch it to pay for that. And that sort of it's a tricky thing to start sort of get that ball rolling. And esports is very similar, right? Like it's the best players, like in any sport, are the ones who get to play against the best players. And Australia's isolated, so which means our ping is bad when you're playing against
I was about to say, and we haven't
overseas.
had the best infrastructure for esports for a long time.
Yeah, but even that's right. Like for NBN, like NBN coming along has obviously helped a lot. But before that, internet was garbage in Australia. But even with NBN, we're still so far away from everyone else that you can't really have a competitive match. Like even in Australia, like playing Perth versus Sydney is difficult, right? Like it's not something that works well. So that means if you want to play esports against the best, you can't really in Australia. So you play against the best in Australia, which is again the same as what happens with soccer. So which means that the audience don't necessarily want to watch Australians because they're not the best when they can quite easily log on to Twitch or like jump onto Twitch at any point and watch the best anywhere around the world. And
I feel like because that pool of talent is smaller than when we get, players that do become really successful and they get bought up by other teteams and they move overseas. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because if they want to continue their career, they go to America, like Renegades, right? Like they like everyone still says they're the Australian team, but they live in the States. So, and they train in the States and they play against American players because that's the only way they're going to get better. So that's definitely the challenge with Australian esports is that we want to do what is going on overseas at that sort of top tier level. And it's hard because we don't have the viewership for that, which means that any money that you bring into it from a revenue standpoint, whether it's from ticket sales, whether it's from sponsorship, doesn't get the return for whoever's putting up that money. But one thing that I personally think is missing and is starting to change is a structure for esports in Australia, and it's tricky because, like, say AFL, no one owns the game. Like, anyone can go down to a park and kick a ball around, and there's no sort of copyright protection for that. But if I want to host a League of Legends tournament, well, Riot owns League of Legends, so I technically need their permission to do that, and they could withdraw that from me at any point. So you've got those weird challenges around building a structure for esports. So the thing that I think is really important, and the way to build that structure without sort of getting into the nitty-gritties of copyright, is the development side of things. So, and particularly school esports. That's something that I'm quite passionate about. Being able to create a safe, structured environment for esports in high schools. If you are a kid, to play sport, a particular sport, through school, and then move on and do that in a future career, we know how to do that. Like, you know how to do that for cricket. We know how to do that for rugby league. So being able to create that structure at the school level, you then have kids who graduate, and 17, 18-year-olds who come out, and
there's a pathway.
There's not only is there a pathway, but there's also, they have a standard of an expectation of how esports should work in a structured and safe way. So you have these people who come out and go, well, I'm not accepting anything less than this for my competitive gaming career, which means that everyone gets better. I think that's some work that I'm actively trying to develop with Lenovo and with some of the games publishers in Australia and New Zealand, to see what we can do for that, and how we can make that work better in Australia. And I've got some goals to work with some of the departments of education around that in the next sort of 6 to 18 months, and really drive that, because I think esports could be great, but I think we're coming at it at the top, not from the bottom. And I think we need to grow it before we sort of try to capitalize on it. I think we may have sort of started running before we've learned to walk.
Totally. You know, I've had this conversation with so many different people, and everyone kind of sort of struggles with how to answer it. And that's the most comprehensive answer I think I've had. Just kind of your insight and experience from just having sort of seen it from the inside, I suppose. And it's so true. I think the answer in the end is that you need to cultivate it at a school level, which is a difficult thing for video games, because the general perception of games still needs to shift, I think, from the broader public away from something that is, has some kind of negative connotation if you're not aware of the kind of broader range of experiences that you can have, and the joy of the competitive nature of it. So I feel like that's really exciting to think that, you know, there could be a future for esports developed at a high school level. And I feel like you're right. That's about how we get the kind of gender balance as well in, because there's a social thing that happens with STEM, with, you know, science and maths and games and everything that still pushes women towards more creative stuff. And until we start to kind of change how kids and I suppose teachers are thinking about video games and, providing opportunities for younger people, you know, we won't be able to see that shift. So that's really exciting.
It is really exciting to see something like that develop. I mean, as you said, like I've seen gaming to make these kind of steps over the years, and from such a niche, really frowned upon sort of activity when I was a kid to a real growth space where so many people accept it. And I mean, we had the Digital Australia report, the latest one, come out a couple of days ago, and we're at 93% of all Australian households are gaming households. So everyone knows about games and plays them, and it's not a big deal anymore.
Well, you've since joined the team at Lenovo as the gaming business development manager, which is huge. How were you looking to sort of take your learnings and experience, I suppose, that you've gained throughout your career and channel that into this sort of Legion arm of the company?
It's been particularly exciting joining Lenovo and sort of looking after the gaming side of things. I feel like I've been, it's one of those weird cliches, like I've been working my whole life towards this, but being the business development manager, I am sort of involved with every part of the business, whether it's sales or pricing or configurations or marketing or influencers or social media or events or what have you. And sort of having done a bit of everything in the games industry has armed me to be able to come in and help Lenovo sort of bring Legion and the gaming brands into a space that makes sense for them and talk to gamers in the right way so that we can really showcase the quality of the product that we've got, rather than just it's another option, but as in it's something, Legion is something that is designed for gamers, but also the company cares about the community. That's really something that I've been helping to drive over the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, I feel like Lenovo as a business is very well known, in sort of business and tech, but Legion is newer, and harnessing that kind of brand and putting it to the forefront of gamers' minds is, a really big undertaking. How do you see Legion positioned within the gaming space through the kinds of initiatives like Rise of Legion tournaments, just through the sort of hardware that you're putting out? How are you kind of showing people that Legion is for gamers?
Yeah, that was a really interesting challenge, sort of joining Lenovo, in that Lenovo are, or if they're not right this second, they have been at many times throughout the 2 years that I've been here, the number one sort of device, like hardware device sales company in the world. And yet we were coming in with arguably one of the newest gaming brands in the world. So essentially, got this giant behemoth of Lenovo, and we're coming as a disruptor brand. Like within that, it's so weird. Like it was the most bizarre sort of scenario, and you can't. In Australia, you can't even sort of leverage off the fact that Lenovo is so big and well known on its own to just go, well, JB Hi-Fi, you should then take our stuff. You have to actually show, because that's not good enough, right? Like we drop all our stuff in JB Hi-Fi and gamers go, well, I don't know what any of this is and who you are, so why would I buy it?
Why should I trust you?
Exactly, effectively. Right? Spending that time really building that trust with gamers, not just from a brand perspective, but also from the product perspective. It is very specific in building out not just sort of let's pump in whatever specs are the most popular and sell that, but actually making some design decisions that are specifically focused to make gaming devices work better for gaming. So not just happen to be a laptop that you've thrown a NVIDIA graphics card in, but actually intelligently design some, like the way the cooling's created and the way redesigning the keyboard and not just pulling in sort of a third-party keyboard, but actually using Lenovo's credibility and quality keyboards and turning that knowledge and ability to gaming and how you could use that from a laptop standpoint for gaming. We kind of take that approach with how we engage with the activities that we do. You mentioned Rise of Legion, which is the esports tournaments that we run here. We actively don't really sponsor teams or giant sort of high-end level tournaments or anything like that. Our Rise of Legion and our Legion of Valkyries are by design grassroots level tournaments.
Yeah.
We do
creating opportunities.
Exactly. Developing people to be able to go, I know how to play this game, and I can maybe find a couple of friends who can play. So let's have a go and see what competing in that space is like. It's really the ethos of sort of how we pull together our activities is looking at opportunities to help develop the gaming industry and the gaming community and individual gamers. I mean, I can even point out our ePrentice campaigns that we've done over the last couple of years that you were very graciously a part of, where we looked at opportunities during COVID and lockdowns where people were potentially reevaluating what their careers were going to be because they couldn't go to work at a shop or a bar or anything like that.
Absolutely. Was there a huge uptake in streamers and content creators during that time?
And so being able to create a campaign like ePrentice, and we did 3 versions of it over the past 12 months, which I'm really excited about. So, and help people find careers in development or streaming or journalism, and make and sort of showcase that as content like that. I was really proud of that. Like the fact that we're not just here to sell stuff, we're here to show everyone what gamers can be, and the best versions of themselves. And look, here's your chance to take what other people do and learn a skill that turns your hobby into a career. Like I'm really happy that we're able to sort of continue to demonstrate that kind of like those kind of values for the gaming community, to show that we are making everything, not games, ideas, programs, to help gamers. Like that's literally what we're here for.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Ben, it was such a pleasure to talk to you, honestly. You've provided such insight into so many areas of the industry. It's just, I feel like I could talk for another couple of hours, but thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you, Steph. It's been wonderful. And it's always great to talk to you, and look forward to seeing more of your stuff always.